In this video, I would like to walk you through the typical code organization of a Datafy project. What you'll see here is the PyCharm editor displaying the air quality demo code. I will do now is walk you through each of these folders and tell you what its purpose is in a Datafy project. To start off, we have the .datafy folder, which contains configuration information regarding your project, such as the project ID, the name, the path in this tree where we'll find the project resources, for example, IAM roles. The template was used to create this project. In this case, we applied the PySpark template, which pre-populates some of these folders and files to get you going faster. The project version and the location in this tree where Datafy will find your project DAGs, so information regarding which jobs should be scheduled and what the interdependencies are. Which brings us to the next folder, the DAGs folder. Here you define your Airflow DAGs, which includes a set of tasks that have interdependencies. For example, task B can only run after task A was successful, and also information regarding scheduling these tasks. In this case, you only defined a single Airflow DAG, which you can see in the UI. How can you define the DAG? This is a typical Airflow way of working. So you define a DAG which has a certain name and certain configuration parameters. For example, what is the scheduler interval, what is a retry policy, and you attach a set of tasks to this DAG. And in this case, a task would be an individual Datafy job that runs on top of the platform. And tasks in this case are ingesting new air quality information. It can be sending an alert to SNS. It can be loading data into Snowflake after a successful ingest. Basically all the Datafy jobs that I have shown you on this slide, and also the things you will see in the Airflow UI when you go to the Datafy UI as well, the task you'll see in Airflow. Now, how do you define a task? That's done through operators. And Datafy provides you with a set of custom operators to make your life a bit easier. In this case, we are using the generic Datafy container operator v2, which is the general way of running Docker files on top of Datafy. So what you have to specify is, okay, which DAG are you linking this task to? What's the task ID? So basically, what's the name of the task? Which commands should you run in the Docker file? And also, what are the arguments you pass to that command? What's the instance type on which this task should run? So you can specify how much memory or CPU you need based on the required instance type as well. And also which Amazon role this task should run under. So even within the same DAG, you can apply different permissions to individual tasks. Apart from the general Datafy container operator, we also have other operators. For example, the Datafy Spark submit operator. So this is an operator dedicated to running Spark applications, but I will show you more of that in another video. And then finally, after you have defined your DAG and also its individual tasks, you will have to define interdependencies between these tasks. And that can be done through these operators here. So for example, this line of code tells Airflow to first run the ingest tasks before running the task that loads data into Snowflake. And this loading task is a prerequisite to running the dbt models on top of the Snowflake cluster. The next folder is a docs folder. This is something I created myself, so it's not included in this default Datafy template, but this basically contains documentation on the project that you still have to write yourself, of course. Then we have the infra folder. This is also a folder not included in the default Datafy template, but this contains Amazon infrastructure configuration specific to this project, which falls outside the Datafy scope. So Datafy focuses mainly on providing the compute platform, so on top of Kubernetes, also information regarding scheduling, and other things like monitoring. But if you have other infrastructure requirements, for example, a database or a messaging topic, these things you still have to provision yourself. And that's what I've done here in this folder, defining all the other requirements for my project that fall outside the Datafy scope. But it is quite limited because the main bulk of the total environment is still the computer environment, and that is covered by Datafy. Then we have resources. This is a folder provided in the typical Datafy project. In this case, this is information regarding the IAM role, so the permission, the role that I use to run my project under, and this contains all the permissions that I attach to that role, and this Terraform code gets applied when running a new Datafy project deploy automatically. So there's no need for me to manage any Terraform state. I just need to specify what I require in terms of IAM roles, and Datafy takes care of the rest. Then we have the source folder. So this is a typical source folder you would see in other Python projects. This gets pre-populated as well. Here we have the actual application code. So this is actually the bulk of the work I had to do to get this project up and running. And this contains some additional folders like a data lake regarding information on how I define the data lake, so where my data resides and so on. It also contains a job folder, so each file here basically is an Airflow task. So when I am running an Airflow task, basically the task will trigger one of these files here, and then some utility. But it is just a typical Python project, or PySpark project in this case. You can configure it how you want, but Datafy does offer you a template, which is what you'll see here, to propose a structure to a project as well. But you don't have to adhere to the structure. And then finally, you have a test folder, which of course contains the Python tests. Then we have a couple of other files. So docker-ignore and gitignore is self-explanatory. Then we have Python version, which is related to the pipenv environment. So in this case, we are using pipenv as a Python package manager. And also finally, the most important part of this standalone file is the Docker file. So this details how the whole Docker application should be built. And this is also the Docker image that will be run upon triggering the workflow. In this case, we are starting from a Spark image. So DataMine of Datafy provides you with a set of images which you can take off the shelf to make it easier for you to run, for example, Spark applications. It also immediately integrates with Glue in this case, which is the metadata store of Amazon. And also it pre-populates this Docker file, so to make sure that you can immediately get started with building your Docker application. Now, the only thing that is still required of you is actually writing the source code here, and then telling Datafy how it should schedule your individual tasks, and also explaining it where it has to look for these tasks. And everything else after a Datafy project build and a Datafy project deploy is abstracted away from you, so the actual run you don't need to worry about anymore.